Welcome to Preparing for the Collapse Radio. Today we're tackling one of the most critical aspects of long-term preparedness, and maybe the most complex, healthcare. Specifically, healthcare when all the centralized systems we rely on just disappear. To do this, we're working from a really powerful article by author Spiritwalker called Beyond Band-Aids: Why You Need an Off-Grid Healthcare Plan. And it's a direct challenge to the idea that just stockpiling a few first aid kits is enough.
It really is. The whole point of the article, the mission, is to force a shift in thinking. You have to move away from just, temporary treatment, away from the quick fix, and towards genuine self-reliance. Because when those systems fail, you are your own doctor. You're the first and critically the last line of defense.
If you think long-term about preparedness, this is the program for you. Okay, so let's unpack this. The first big point Spearwalker addresses is the timeline of disruption.
Yeah, this is a fundamental misconception, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've all been conditioned to see emergencies as temporary, a few days, maybe a week or two, and then things go back to normal.
Right, and so our prep reflects that. We get supplies for that short bridge, assuming the pharmacy or the clinic will reopen.
Exactly, the classic Band-Aid mindset.
But Spiritwalker argues this fails completely when the entire support structure vanishes.
What's so fascinating is how fragile it all is. It's not just the hospitals themselves, it's the supply chain for the most basic things. Sterile gloves, IV fluids, even simple diagnostic tools. They're all made in these massive centralized facilities.
Often overseas, requiring constant power, constant transport.
Right. So the crucial point is that systemic dependency. The moment transportation stops or the power grid is unstable, the shelves empty. Fast.
So an off-grid plan has to assume that resupply isn't coming.
It may never come. What you have on hand is all you're ever going to have.
And that creates a multiplier effect on risk, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Think about a dental abscess, or even just a deep cut that needs stitches. Today, those are routine fixes. Off-grid, without antibiotics, without sterile tools. A simple infection can become life-threatening in days.
It's so powerful, but so brittle when you take away the centralization.
Which really raises the question, what decentralized layers of defense can we actually build now to mitigate those threats?
And that brings us right to the core of resilience. Spiritwalker argues we have to shift our focus entirely, away from just treatment and towards prevention, maintenance, and really early intervention.
Yes. You can't rely on finding a cure. You have to rely on avoiding the problem in the first place. We often fixate on the dramatic stuff, broken leg or a serious wound. But Spiritwalker says the vast majority of casualties in a long-term collapse will come from preventable, everyday things.
He lays out 5 foundational pillars, and they sound simple, but they're incredibly complex off-grid.
They really are. Clean water, nutrition, hygiene, physical conditioning.
We all know the list. But let's get into the execution. What does off-grid clean water look like when your commercial filter is shot?
Well, that's the challenge. It's not just boiling. It's about sustainable systems. Slow sand filters, solar disinfection, maybe distillation, and knowing how to build and maintain them without a manual or a spare part from the manufacturer.
And hygiene isn't just about washing your hands.
Not at all. It's about rigorous waste management to prevent diseases like cholera or dysentery that could wipe out a whole community.
Okay, here's where the article gets really interesting. Spiritwalker highlights wound care. People massively, massively underestimate the risk of a simple cut.
Because the threat is invisible. We clean it, we put a bandage on it, we think we're fine. But off-grid, you can't tell the difference between a minor bacterial issue and a fast-moving anaerobic infection that leads to sepsis.
So it's the knowledge that matters. Knowing how to properly irrigate a wound, when to debride it to remove damaged tissue, and how to spot those first subtle signs of systemic infection.
That knowledge is the difference between a little discomfort and losing a limb, or your life.
And this focus on maintenance forces us to look at chronic conditions. This is a huge issue. So many people rely on daily meds for things like diabetes, heart disease, thyroid issues.
Right, and Spearwalker is really blunt about this. You have to do an honest vulnerability assessment. For something like type 1 diabetes, insulin needs a constant cold chain. For sleep apnea, a CPAP machine needs guaranteed power.
Ignoring that doesn't make it go away.
No, it just postpones the crisis until you have 0 options left.
And before we get to natural remedies, we can't skip the mental health component. He brings it up as critical.
Because a calm, clear mind is your single greatest asset. Panic leads to bad decisions, and in a high-stakes environment, a bad decision can be fatal.
So learning basic stress management, grounding practices, It's not optional.
It's a core survival skill.
So that brings us to the solutions that move beyond the pill bottle. For Spiritwalker, herbal medicine isn't some magic cure. He sees it as a practical, resilient tool to bridge the gap when pharmaceuticals are gone.
Exactly. It's about replacing centralized manufacturing with local production. You can stockpile modern medicine, but that's a finite resource. Stockpiling knowledge of how to grow, find, and prepare your own medicine.
That's the ultimate renewable resource.
Using herbs as another layer of defense for inflammation, low-grade infections, respiratory support, pain.
Yeah.
The common stuff.
But let me ask the devil's advocate question here. For an audience used to fast-acting pharmaceuticals, isn't there a risk, of trying to treat a serious infection with slow-acting herbs?
That is a very important challenge, and the answer is in the knowledge base that he promotes. Real herbal knowledge includes diagnosis. It includes knowing the limits. The goal isn't to replace a modern hospital. It's to successfully manage 95% of common issues at home so they never escalate to the point where you'd need a hospital.
That commitment to practical knowledge is why he wrote the book, Growing, Foraging, and Making Natural Medicine, Preparing for the Collapse. It's written for that reality where the pharmacy is just gone.
Right. It moves past theory into the actual skills. And it addresses that longevity problem. You need to know how to process herbs for long-term stability and potency.
Let's get specific about the methods he teaches, because the technical side matters. He covers things like tinctures, decoctions, salves. Why does an off-grid practitioner need to know the difference between all of these?
Well, knowing the difference is survival 101 for an herbalist. A tincture uses alcohol to extract compounds. It gives you a highly concentrated medicine with a shelf life of years, critical for storage.
And an infusion is more like a standard tea.
Exactly. Great for quick use, but no shelf stability. A decoction is for boiling harder materials like roots or bark to get the tough compounds out.
And a salve.
A salve is for topical use. You infuse oils with herbs, mix it with beeswax. It's essential for wound healing, burns, localized pain. Knowing which method to use for which plant and for how long you need it to last, that is your off-grid pharmacy.
That level of detail is so practical. He also focuses on identifying key plants for when conventional antibiotics are gone. Let's give the listener some concrete examples from the material. He talks about usnea, mullein, and ponderosa pine resin salve.
Yeah, these are perfect examples of decentralized power. Usnea is a lichen. It has incredible natural antibacterial and antifungal properties.
So it's for infection control.
Yes, localized infection. Mullein is a phenomenal respiratory herb, vital for coughs, asthma, any kind of secondary lung infection in a dirty environment.
And the ponderosa pine resin?
That's traditionally used for deep wound healing. It acts as a natural antiseptic and drawing agent when you prepare it as a salve. These are immediate, actionable substitutes.
This all feels like a really integrated system of preparedness. Spiritwalker also designed the Ultimate Survival Prepper logbook. He calls it a personal emergency operations center on paper.
And that's critical. In a world with no patient records, you have to create your own. Documenting symptoms, treatments, reaction times. It elevates what you're doing from guesswork to a systematic process.
For listeners who want to dig deeper into this whole lifestyle homesteading, self-sufficiency, we really encourage you to check out the Forgotten Wisdom blog. It connects directly to Spiritwalker's preventative pillars. They just had articles on low-tech homesteading and perennial foods for long-term security.
Which is that nutrition component we talked about.
Right. And all this information is supported by the community over at Nomadic Enterprises. Their marketplace is where you can find the tools to actually build this health plan. Like garden seeds, they have a 50-variety heirloom seed pack. And they also carry the natural and alternative remedies we just discussed. Wildcrafted usnea, mullein. So you can start practicing with these things now.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? At the end of the day, an off-grid healthcare plan is about taking total responsibility. It's about recognizing that these systems are fragile, and self-reliance isn't just a preference, it's a prerequisite for survival.
Real preparedness is about building layers.
Exactly. Knowledge, supplies, production capabilities, adaptable systems. Not just relying on a store shelf that's going to be empty.
Spiritwalker emphasizes that his book, Growing, Foraging, and Making Natural Medicine, is part of the bigger Preparing for the Collapse series. The whole series is focused on getting past that initial shock, surviving that first year and beyond. And because we believe this knowledge is so critical, we want you to know there's a special sale on right now for the entire book series. For listeners who want to purchase the whole collection and really deepen their preparedness, we've put a direct link for that sale in the description for this program.
Spiritwalker says it very simply. By the time you need real off-grid healthcare knowledge, it is already too late to prepare. And that raises an important question for you to think about. Beyond your first aid kit, what one specific skill, whether it's identifying one medicinal herb or mastering water purification or learning to make a shelf-stable salve, what one skill are you committing to learning this week to make yourself that first line of defense?
Thank you for joining us for another in-depth discussion into your source material here on Preparing for the Collapse Radio. We'll talk to you next time.